You ever had that moment where someone says something small and it feels like a spark lights a wildfire inside you? You can feel it rising, your chest tightens, your heart pounds, and before you know it, your peace is gone. And you're standing there thinking, why did that bother me so much? Let me tell you something. Right there, in that space between what happened and how you respond, that's the battleground where your power lies. See, when you get emotionally triggered, your mind wants to fight, to defend, to prove, to react, but your spirit, your higher self, wants you to pause, because that pause is where wisdom whispers. That pause is where you take back your authority from what tried to own you. You are not your reaction. You are not the anger, the offense, or the insecurity that just got stirred. You are the awareness watching it rise. And that awareness, that still grounded presence, is your greatest strength. When you feel triggered, don't rush to fix the feeling. Sit in it, observe it, ask, what is this trying to show me about me? Because emotional triggers are teachers. They show you where your peace depends too much on something outside of you. And the moment you recognize that, that's the moment you begin to walk in real freedom. Some of you think detachment means you stop caring. No, detachment means you stop clinging. It means you care with clarity, not with chaos. It means you love people without losing yourself. It means you listen to pain without letting it dictate your purpose. The person who can remain calm when others lose control, that person holds the room, not because they're cold, but because they've mastered themselves. That's strength. That's confidence. That's peace in motion. You see, spiritual detachment isn't escape. It's elevation. It's when you realize, I don't have to attend every emotional battle I'm invited to. Not every energy deserves your reaction. Not every word requires your defense. Sometimes silence is your greatest response, because silence says, I'm not moved by what doesn't define me. When you stop reacting, you start ruling. You move from being controlled by emotion to being guided by intention. And that's when people start to notice something different about you. They can't pull you in a drama. They can't shake your peace, because you've decided nothing outside of me has permission to govern what's inside of me. So the next time you feel triggered, pause, breathe, remember who you are. You don't need to prove your power. You need to protect it. Because every moment you stay calm in chaos, you're telling the universe, I am not my emotion. I am the one who commands it. And that right there is what true strength feels like. Emotional triggers are not random explosions of feeling. They're sacred signals, flashes of truth that reveal where we're still chained to something we haven't yet released. When someone says something that stings a little too deeply or does something that feels unreasonably personal, it's rarely about that single moment. It's about what that moment awakens within you. Every trigger is a mirror, showing you the parts of your heart still waiting to be healed. It's never truly about the other person. It's about what their action touched that was already tender inside you. Most people spend their lives trying to control the world around them to avoid being triggered. They change jobs and relationships or retreat from life, hoping that peace will come from eliminating discomfort. But peace doesn't come from control. It comes from clarity. The things that trigger you are not enemies. They are messengers. They point directly to the unresolved pain, the hidden beliefs, and the unhealed attachments that quietly dictate your emotions. They say, look here. This is where you still believe you need validation. This is where you still fear being unseen. This is where love has not yet replaced fear. When you understand that everything changes, instead of reacting with anger or defense, you can start responding with awareness. You stop saying, they hurt me, and begin saying, they revealed where I'm still hurting. That shift doesn't excuse people's behavior. It empowers yours. Because as long as your peace depends on how others act, you're still a prisoner. But when you let triggers become teachers, you begin to walk free. Every emotional reaction carries a message somewhere inside. There's a wound asking for your attention. Maybe someone's rejection reminded you of a childhood moment when you felt unwanted. Maybe a small criticism echoes years of feeling inadequate. The present moment is never just the present, it's the past asking to be released. When you begin to meet those emotions with compassion instead of condemnation, you start to heal. Freedom isn't found in never being triggered again. It's found in seeing a trigger and saying, I know this feeling. I see what it's showing me. You breathe, stay still, and choose not to let that old wind speak for you. That's the moment your emotions stop owning you and you start owning your peace. The goal has never been to stop feeling. Emotions are not the enemy. They are the evidence that you're alive, that you're human, that something within you still cares. But the problem begins when you start believing that every feeling deserves your reaction, your energy, your identity. Feelings are visitors. They come to show you something, not to take over your home. The danger is when you let them move in and start redecorating your mind. When anger shows up, it's not saying, become me. It's saying, pay attention. When sadness surfaces, it's not asking you to drown in it. It's inviting you to listen to what's been neglected. The moment you begin to mistake what you feel for who you are, you lose your authority over yourself. You're not your frustration. You're not your fear. You are not your anxiety, your insecurity, or your pain. You are the awareness behind all of it, the observer who can stand still in the storm and still see clearly. That's what emotional maturity looks like, not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. When something triggers you, you don't collapse into reaction. You take a breath, you ground yourself, and you watch the wave rise and fall without letting it carry you away. That's how you stay rooted when life pulls at you. Because emotions are energy, they move. And if you let them move through you without clinging or pushing them away, they pass. But if you react impulsively, if you let the emotion dictate your choices, you give it authority it never deserved. This doesn't mean you suppress or fake peace. It means you give yourself permission to feel without losing control. It's knowing the difference between acknowledging anger and becoming anger, between expressing hurt and being consumed by it. It's saying, yes, I feel this, but I am not this. That awareness is freedom. True strength isn't found in emotional numbness. It's found in emotional clarity. The more you learn to witness your feelings without worshiping them, the more unshakable you become. Life can still touch you, but it can't move you off center. That's when your emotions stop running your life and start serving your growth. Because the goal is never to stop feeling, it's to feel deeply, but respond wisely. Detachment is not disconnection, it's discipline. It's the quiet strength of staying rooted in who you are, even when the world tries to pull you in 1,000 emotional directions. Most people confuse detachment with indifference, thinking it means you stop caring, stop feeling, or stop showing up. But true detachment isn't cold, it's clear. It's the ability to love fully without losing yourself, to engage deeply without being consumed, and to walk away from chaos without guilt. When you practice detachment, you are not shutting the world out, you're creating space between stimulus and response. That space is sacred. It's where discernment lives. It's where you get to decide, do I react from my wound or do I respond from my wisdom? That's the difference between being controlled by emotion and being guided by purpose. Because when you're attached to outcomes, approval, or how people treat you, you hand over your peace. But when you detach, you reclaim it. You no longer beg the world to behave a certain way so you can feel okay. You learn to be okay regardless. This doesn't mean you stop feeling the sting of disappointment or the ache of loss. It means you stop letting those moments dictate your identity. You stop needing things to go right in order to remain right within yourself. Detachment says, I can love you and still let you go. I can care and still have boundaries. I can show up and still protect my peace. That's not hardness, it's holiness. It's the spiritual discipline of guarding your inner world from unnecessary invasion. Every time you detach, you declare that your emotions no longer own you. You move from reaction to response, from chaos to calm. You stop chasing validation because you've realized your worth doesn't depend on anyone's recognition. You stop over-explaining because you've learned peace is better than being understood. That's the power of detachment. It centers you in truth, not turmoil. When you can look at what's happening, acknowledge it, and still choose peace, you're walking in mastery. You're not disconnected, you're discerning, you feel everything. But you choose what deserves your energy. That's the art of emotional discipline, caring deeply, but standing steady. Detachment is not distance, it's direction. It's choosing peace over participation in chaos. The person who can stay calm in chaos holds the true power in any situation, because while everyone else is reacting, shouting, defending, or retreating, that calm person has already stepped into leadership. Without even trying, calmness is not weakness, it's authority. It's the presence of someone who knows that losing composure never wins the battle. The loudest voice doesn't lead the room, the most grounded one does. When you can hold your peace when everything around you is shaking, you become the anchor others subconsciously look to. Chaos feeds off reaction. It thrives on emotional exchange. The moment you lose your calm, you've entered its game, and chaos always wins when you play on its level. But when you remain calm, you shift the energy of the entire environment. You remind everyone, including yourself, that peace is power, not passivity. Staying calm doesn't mean you agree with what's happening or that you're unaffected. It means you refuse to let external storms dictate your internal weather. Calmness requires inner confidence. It's the quiet knowing that you don't have to prove, control, or rush. You trust that truth, time, and discipline will do what emotion and force never could. When you are calm, you can see more clearly, hear more deeply, and respond more wisely. That's why calm people often seem unshakable. They're not numb, they're discerning. They understand that reacting in anger may feel powerful, but it's actually surrendering your control to the situation. True strength is holding steady when others expect you to fall apart. Every moment you choose calm, you're training your spirit to stay centered under pressure. You're saying to yourself, I am safe in my stillness. And that stillness, when practiced over time, becomes your superpower. It allows you to navigate conflict with grace, to make decisions from clarity, and to protect your energy from chaos that doesn't deserve your reaction. When others throw emotion, you hold peace. When others rush, you breathe. When others demand reaction, you choose presence. That's how calmness becomes influence. Because people remember how you made them feel, and the person who can stand calm in the storm becomes the one everyone trusts to lead when it matters most. That's not just composure, it's quiet command. Emotional control is not suppression, it's sacred stewardship over your internal state. It's the art of knowing that your emotions are valid, but they are not sovereign. They can express, but they cannot rule. Suppression is when you bury your feelings under layers of denial, pretending they don't exist. Control, however, is when you feel everything fully but choose your expression wisely. It's saying, I honor what I feel, but I decide how I release it. That's mastery, not over emotion itself, but over what you allow emotion to produce. Many people confuse suppression with strength. They think being stoic, silent, or unmoved means they're in control. But real control doesn't hide, it harnesses. It takes the energy of anger and channels it into truth. It takes the ache of heartbreak and turns it into wisdom. It takes the sting of disappointment and turns it into direction. You can't lead your life from denial. What you suppress will eventually surface, and when it does, it won't ask for permission. That's why emotional control starts with acknowledgement. I see what I feel, but I am not enslaved by it. When you master emotional control, you become intentional about your energy. You stop letting temporary feelings cause permanent damage. You stop saying things in anger that your heart doesn't mean. You stop giving away your peace just to prove a point. You start moving from purpose, not impulse. That's when your emotions become your allies instead of your enemies. They inform you, but they no longer imprison you. This kind of control is a spiritual discipline. It requires awareness, humility, and practice. It's not about perfection, it's about presence. Every time you feel triggered but choose to breathe instead of burst, you're strengthening that inner muscle. You're teaching your mind that peace is a choice, not a circumstance. Over time, you begin to notice that you no longer spiral as quickly, no longer speak out of pain as easily, and no longer hand your power to moments that don't deserve it. Emotional control is the quiet confidence that says, I can feel this and still stay centered. That's sacred stewardship. Guarding your inner world is something holy. Because when you control your emotions, you're not suppressing your humanity. You're protecting your divinity. What triggers you often points to what still needs your compassion, not your judgment. When something stirs anger, shame, or insecurity within you, it's easy to get defensive, to label that part of yourself as weak or broken. But the truth is, those emotional triggers are not flaws, they're invitations. They are the places within you still waiting for understanding, softness, and healing. Judgment says, I shouldn't feel this way. Compassion says, I see why I do. That's the difference between continuing your pain and transforming it. Every trigger is a mirror showing you a wound that hasn't been met with love yet. When someone's words offend you deeply, it's not just about what they said. It's about the echo it hits inside of you. Maybe it reminds you of rejection, of not being heard, of feeling small. And that sting is your body's way of saying, there's something here that still hurts. Can we take care of it instead of hiding it? But most people respond with resistance instead of reflection. They lash out, withdraw, or blame the world, never realizing they're punishing themselves for being human. Compassion changes that. Compassion looks at the trigger and says, I get it. You're protecting me from an old story. You're trying to keep me safe. It doesn't justify harmful behavior, but it recognizes that the emotion beneath the reaction isn't evil. It's wounded. The more you meet those wounds with tenderness, the less power they have over you. Because healing doesn't come from fighting your emotions. It comes from befriending them. When you bring compassion to what triggers you, you begin to dissolve its hold. You start to understand that your reactions are not signs of failure, they're signals of growth. They point to where light still needs to enter. And with that awareness, your heart softens, you forgive more easily, you breathe more slowly, and you stop demanding perfection from yourself. Judgment keeps you trapped, compassion sets you free, because healing isn't about becoming untouchable, it's about becoming whole. So the next time something triggers you, don't condemn yourself for feeling it. Pause, listen, and respond with gentleness. That emotion isn't your enemy, it's your younger self asking to be seen, soothed, and finally set free. When you pause before reacting, you reclaim the authority over your peace. That small moment of stillness, the one most people rush past, is where your greatest strength is built. The pause is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the sacred space between what happens to you and what you choose to do about it. In that breath, you are no longer driven by the pull of emotion, you're guided by intention. Every reaction you withhold is not suppression, it's self-respect, because reacting is easy. Responding is powerful. Most of the chaos in your life doesn't come from what happens. It comes from how quickly you respond to what happens. When you pause, you interrupt the cycle of impulse. You tell your nervous system, we're not in danger, we're just uncomfortable. And in that calm, your clarity returns. You can see the situation for what it is, not what your fear or anger has exaggerated it to be. The pause gives you perspective. It gives you a chance to align with who you are, not who the moment is trying to turn you into. It takes deep strength to pause when everything in you wants to prove, defend, or react. That restraint doesn't mean you're indifferent. It means you're in control. The pause gives you power because it breaks the chain of automatic behavior that keeps you repeating the same lessons. Every time you pause, you choose peace over performance, grounding over ego. You remind yourself, I don't need to match their chaos to show my worth. In that space, you also allow truth to speak before emotion takes over. You begin to recognize that not every comment deserves a reply, not every challenge needs a fight, and not every situation requires your energy. Some moments need nothing more than your silence and your stillness. That's how you conserve your power. That's how you stay aligned with your higher self instead of being pulled into lower reactions. Pausing is a spiritual discipline. It's training your soul to lead instead of letting your emotions drive. When you pause, you choose mastery over momentum. You may not control what's said to you or done around you, but you always control your response. And that control is the difference between momentary peace and lasting freedom. Maturity is measured by how quickly you return to your center after being shaken. It's not about never being triggered or always staying calm. It's about how fast you find your way back to peace once you've lost it. Life will always test you. People will offend you, disappoint you, and misunderstand you. Circumstances will shift, emotions will rise, and your patience will stretch thin. But emotional maturity isn't the absence of disruption. It's the ability to recover alignment faster each time. The quicker you return to stillness, the stronger your spirit becomes. Think about it, anyone can be peaceful when life is quiet. But real maturity is when you can be knocked off balance and still choose not to stay there. It's when you can catch yourself mid-reaction, breathe, and say, this doesn't deserve my peace. That's growth. You start to notice that you no longer dwell on things as long as you used to. You don't replay conversations in your head for days. You stop letting small things take up sacred space in your mind because peace becomes more valuable to you than being right, and your center becomes more important than your ego. Returning to your center doesn't mean ignoring what happened. It means processing it without losing yourself in it. It's pausing long enough to remember who you are beneath the noise, steady, grounded, whole. Every time you return faster, it's because you've built muscle memory in your spirit. You've trained your heart to remember its home. That's what inner maturity looks like. Self-regulation that comes from knowing your peace is too expensive to give away freely. The world will always hand you opportunities to lose control. But when you know how to come back to center, you no longer react from your wound. You respond from your wisdom. That's how you grow from emotional survival to spiritual stability. You start to trust yourself again, not because you never fall, but because you've learned how to rise without resentment. The measure of maturity isn't perfection. It's recovery. It's how quickly you can return to clarity after confusion, calm after chaos, grace after anger. Every return is a victory, every pause a sign of growth, because the more rooted you are in your center, the less the world can shake you from it. You cannot lead love or grow if your emotions lead you, because when emotions are in charge, clarity disappears. You start making decisions from fear instead of faith, from insecurity instead of insight. Emotion is powerful, but it was never meant to be the driver. It's meant to be the messenger. When you let it take the wheel, you end up reacting to life instead of directing it. Leadership, whether over yourself, your relationships, or your purpose, requires steadiness. And steadiness only comes when your emotions report to your wisdom, not the other way around. If anger leads you, you'll destroy what you're meant to protect. If fear leads you, you'll avoid what you're meant to confront. If pride leads you, you'll resist the very lessons that would have freed you. Emotion can serve you beautifully when it's guided, but it will sabotage you when it's unrestrained. That's why emotional mastery is a form of spiritual maturity. It's knowing when to listen to how you feel without bowing to it. You don't ignore your emotions. You honor them by asking what they're trying to show you, then deciding what truth deserves your action. When emotions lead, love becomes conditional. You start loving only when it feels safe, forgiving only when it feels fair, showing up only when it feels easy. But true love, the kind that transforms, requires grounding. You can't pour into someone else when you're constantly spilling out through emotional reactivity. The moment you start leading from your higher self instead of your feelings, your love becomes steady, your choices become clear, and your growth becomes sustainable. Growth demands consistency, and consistency can't exist if you're ruled by shifting emotion. Feelings change like weather, but purpose doesn't. So when your emotions try to take control, remember you can feel everything without letting it dictate your direction. Feelings are signals, not sentences. They tell you what's happening inside, but they don't define what you must do. When your spirit leads and your emotions follow, peace becomes your default. You respond, not react. You not break. You love from overflow, not desperation. That's when your emotions stop running your life and start fueling your purpose. Because you were never meant to be led by what you feel, you were meant to lead with who you are. Spiritual detachment is not running away from pain. It's standing so rooted in truth that pain no longer runs you. It's the calm recognition that what happens around you does not have the power to redefine what's within you. Detachment doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you no longer worship the feeling. It's understanding that everything you experience, joy, loss, betrayal, success, is temporary, and your worth is not tied to any of it. Pain can visit, but it cannot live in you unless you give it permission. When you are spiritually detached, you stop chasing outcomes to feel safe. You stop needing people to behave a certain way for you to have peace. You begin to live from your center instead of your circumstances. Pain might still knock at your door, but instead of letting it take over your home, you greet it with awareness. I see you. I'll learn from you. But you don't get to control me. That is what it means to stand rooted in truth. You can feel deeply without being swept away. Most people run from pain because they fear it will consume them. But the truth is, pain loses its power when you stop resisting it. Detachment lets you observe the storm without becoming the storm. You can watch the emotion rise, honor its message, and still remain grounded in peace. That's not indifference, that's alignment. You're not escaping life, you're engaging it from a higher place, one that isn't dictated by temporary turbulence. When you live this way, your reactions change. You stop grasping for control. You stop begging for closure from others. You stop giving pain the authority to narrate your story. You learn to say, this hurts, but it will pass. This shakes me, but it won't break me. Detachment doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. It allows you to love without clinging, to grieve without despair, and to move forward without bitterness. The more detached you become, the freer you feel. Because detachment isn't about escaping emotion, it's about mastering presence. It's choosing to remain anchored in truth even when emotion tries to pull you under. Pain may still touch you, but it can't own you, and that is the essence of spiritual strength, feeling everything yet being ruled by nothing. When life presses you, when emotions rise and chaos stirs, remember this: the power isn't in avoiding the storm, it's in mastering your stillness within it. Every trigger, every wave of feeling, every moment that tests your peace is not here to break you, it's here to refine you. You are not what happens to you, you are how you choose to rise from it. True strength is not loud, it doesn't shout, it doesn't fight for control. It stands rooted and unbothered in divine confidence. You've got to learn to meet life's intensity with spiritual calm, to breathe instead of react, to respond from truth instead of trauma. Because every time you do, you prove that peace is not something the world can give or take. It's something you guard within yourself. So the next time something triggers you, don't collapse into reaction. Stand tall in awareness. Remember, you are the gatekeeper of your energy, the protector of your purpose, the author of your response. Let stillness be your strategy. Let clarity be your strength, and let peace, your unshakable, grounded, sacred peace, be the loudest voice in every storm you face.